Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Rangers Review morning briefing. I'm Blair Malloy. A little bit of a shuffling of the pack this morning. I know you were expecting Chris and Stevie, but I'm here this morning to take you through today's morning briefing. For those who are a fan of my dulcet tones, you're in for a treat. For those that aren't, hard cheese. You've got me again. I'm joined today by Chris Jack. Chris, how are we this Wednesday?
Don't be doing yourself down like that. You're the man that's the maestro of these things. If it myself and Stevie, I would have put the wrong title on it. We would have started late. Stevie would have been sitting in the dark somewhere because I wouldn't have turned his light on. So no, you're the right man to be pushing all these particular buttons.
Well, thank you very much. That fills me with confidence that one person at least has faith in my ability. Before we get into today's talking points, a word for our podcast sponsor, Willows Fencing. Of course, the Glasgow-based fencing company you can trust. For 10% off, visit the website and enter the code flashing along the ticker just now. They are, as I'm reliably informed, the guys to go to get your fences fixed as well. We're coming out of the winter season, but it is still cold and windy out there. Still a little bit of repair work needing done. Of course, when it gets to the summer, you might want to be redoing the garden, Chris. I know my dad is of a certain vintage that as soon as the weather turns and the sun starts coming out, he's never out of the garden. He's always trying to tinker about, doing little bits and bobs, and that could be the perfect time to get a new fence or some such put up.
I hope you'll be taking advantage of the Willows fencing discount in that regard. I've got my own handyman in terms of Mr. Jack Senior. He does all these particular odd jobs for us round about Jack Towers. But we do like a bit of gardening here as well. I've got a green fingers to match my blue nose.
It's green fingers and that's all on this podcast, Chris. So we'll get right into it. Thanks to everyone who's joined us in the comments already. Let us know if you're doing any gardening this year. We'll get into the main topic today is based off a piece that you wrote on the website. It's all about this idea of the fans at Ibrox and how big they will be to this title charge. And we spoke about it yesterday, myself and Derek, just the electricity around Ibrox on Sunday. It was truly magnificent spectacle. It was the loudest I've heard Ibrox in a long time. And I think that from my own perspective, that really played into Rangers coming away with that really positive result. And I think that between now and the rest of the season, as the club have made mention of in this new campaign, which we'll come on to talk about, I think they see this as something that can really, really help propel the team on to success. And if Rangers can get Ibrox going like that every single week between now and the end of the season, they give themselves a massive, massive boost in this title race. And it's an incredible extra weapon to have at their disposal when it comes into these really, really testing games. I want to start, Chris, by talking a little bit about the manager, though. Danny Rule, as you mentioned in the opening paragraph on that piece, you can, of course, read it at the Rangers Review website. If you've not subscribed, we do still have that offer on. I think it's £4 for 4 months. You get wonderful pieces such as Chris's analysis today. But you make mention in the opening paragraph of Danny Rule, and he had that moment on Sunday when that Gianmita goal went in where he just lost himself a little bit. He just let himself get caught up in it, and he went careering down the touchline, Jose Mourinho-esque, a la Porto at Old Trafford back in 2003. And for Rangers fans of a certain vintage as well, shades of Walter Smith celebrating up the touchline. And I think it was, for me personally anyway, I thought it was really, really good to see. I thought it was wonderful to see the manager really get swept up in it. And you can see what it means to him when that Gianmita goal went in.
You know, we've reached the midweek point of the week when there's no midweek game, and we're now talking about gardening on the show. That's the depth that we've got to. But on a far more positive note and a far more Rangers themed note, I thought that was really interesting from the manager, but in a really nice way. We've spoken a lot to him also over recent months. We've watched him on the touchline. You see him in and around the place. You also see him on a match day. You see him in a press conference situation. And he conducts himself in a very particular way. He's very cool, very calm, very collected. I think he speaks very well. He strikes the right tone. He doesn't try and tell fans what they're not seeing when he assesses games. But it was just something that you see him being caught up in that in that moment. I say that kind of that dart down the touchline. I didn't know he had that turn of pace in him, but he covered a lot of ground in a short space of time. But it was great to see, because that's the type of moment that if you can't enjoy that type of goal, that type of game, that type of occasion, you're at the wrong club, aren't you? No, that's why we're all here. That's why we go and we report on the games. That's why we cover them as much. That's why if you are a manager, you want to manage here. That's why if you're a player, you want to play here. It's the chance to go and win things. And Sunday was a huge step in the right direction in terms of Rangers potentially winning things. So I think a lot of people of a certain vintage would have said it's Mourinho. People of a slightly older vintage would have certainly thought, no, that's Walter and Bo Anderson, and that kind of run down the turn to the enclosure and the fist pumping. I think it's safe to say Rangers and this title race, it's got under Danny Röhl's skin. So when he speaks to the media again on Friday, I don't think you'll see him jumping about the place. He'll stick to the one game at a time. He'll stick to the message. But I think that was just a wee insight into how much he's really bought into this club, how much he gets it, how much he understands it, and what the potential to go on and win the Premiership really means to him.
He brings this point up here. Walter celebrating with the fans when Bo Anderson scored the winner in '96 versus Celtic. Now, I'm a little bit too young to remember that fully, Chris. I'll give the game away here. I was 1 when that happened, so it wasn't quite in my conscious memory. But as you pointed out in your piece today, there is the links, not just in that action from Danny Röhl at the weekend, but also between the Walter Smith lineage and this new campaign from the club, this full house, full voices, full 90, which they are really pushing forward. And this really awe-inspiring video that the club produced just before that game against Hearts on Sunday, which really built the atmosphere. And of course, results definitely play into this, and these campaigns only really work if the results come on the park. I'm reminded back to the run to Seville, which I mentioned yesterday, when you had those the famous back cam that went along the club deck, and you've seen those raucous atmospheric videos that would come out after every game, and it almost became like a perpetual cycle feeding into the next game. As soon as the videos came out from the last one, you couldn't wait to get back to Ibrox to go and try and better it, to go and try and make it even louder the next time. And this campaign, it seems to have really taken off amongst the Rangers support.
I think there's perhaps a danger with campaigns like this, that they are a bit patronising almost, that they're a bit too commercial.
If they're not done properly.
Yes, I think that's a very fine line. Not just that Rangers must straddle every club. Now, when you speak to the fans, you have to be very careful in terms of messaging, and you have to get that messaging right. It can't be patronising. It can't be a wee bit of a pat in the head. It can't feel too forced or too as if it's been driven by marketing, or it's been fired through AI to come up with a Rangers fans, you're really great type stuff. And I think the club have struck the right tone on this one. The message behind it, you can't really argue with. It's become evident that there's a number of season ticket holders that are not regular match day attenders. It's become evident that there's a number of fans that leave long before the end of matches, and that clearly has an impact. You look at the manager's comments when he spoke after the Kelly game, I think it was, and he was critical of the support and the half-time booing. You then see the comments after the game at the weekend. He said it was outstanding, and he really spoke up this growing affinity between those on the park and those in the stands. So I think the club have really tried to feed into that. They've tried to kind of harness that energy. I think with this campaign, this kind of promo that they've done, they've struck the right tone. You mentioned the link there. If people don't know, again, it's one of the details that's in the piece. The voice on that video is Neil Smith, Walter's son, who's been at the club for a long, long time. He's forgotten more about Rangers than a lot of people will ever know. Safe to say, Neil has been through an awful lot at that football club, but knows it inside out, obviously. And I think he was the ideal candidate to kind of provide that voiceover and get that message across. I thought on Sunday it was nice to see it. Nice to see that message really being taken on board. The game itself obviously captivates people, and if you get to 10 minutes before the end, you don't really want to be leaving because of the state of the game and what it means. But I think, as the manager said, Ibrox felt like Ibrox for the first time since he was here, and I thought the campaign and everything that all stands did, as well as the Union Bears, and it all just kind of fed into a really, really encouraging and quite a special afternoon. You captured one of the moments of that afternoon. You've gone viral in recent days with your efforts, and I mentioned that clip in the piece as well. That split second of silence as the ball hits the net, and your video then captures the Copeland like rising in unison, and there's arms everywhere, there's people jumping everywhere. You hear that roar. So you were in the right place at the right time to capture that while I had my head down, clattering away in 1,200 words.
Limbs, Chris. I believe it's limbs is the word the kids use to describe that. And the Copeland stand after that goal, yeah, it was a truly special moment. And I have not felt positivity like this in a long time. This week, obviously going into that Motherwell game last week, everybody was excited. They were expectant. They knew this was a big week to come. And I think that leaving both those games, having not lost either of them, was massive in moving forward with this title charge. It really puts Rangers in a really good place. Before we carry on, Day in the Life here, saying smash the like button for the lads at the RR. Thank you very much, Day in the Life, for doing my job for me. The positivity has been incredible this week. There's a sort of wider point before we come on to talk about Livingston a little bit. There's a wider point that I'd like to posit to you, Chris, that this, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a little bit too young to really remember the sort of 90s and even the early 2000s I remember, but I wasn't conscious as an adult. And I turned to you at one point and I said, how did you sit through this in 2002 when Mikel Arteta was stepping up to take that penalty? I don't know if I've got the nerve for this. Now, this is the first real proper title race in what I would call the social media age, if you will. This is the first time where it could potentially go down to the wire, not least just with two teams, potentially three teams. We could be getting into the final weeks of the season, all three still in contention to win this title. In this era where everything is dissected to the nth degree, everything is taken and ripped apart and put back together again and ripped apart again on social media. And for clips like the ones at the weekend, that does have a positive side. That works well because fans can relive these moments. They can watch them over and over again. They can build on that excitement, and that can really harness the power of that crowd behind you. But on the flip side of that, when any little thing goes wrong, as we know, we work in the media, we see social media all the time, how damaging that can also be if things are being poured over and that negativity starts to build. So I do wonder how the collective, for want of a better phrase, bottle of the fans will be going into the final weeks and months of this season when the narrative is 24 hours a day, non-stop. It's not just sitting in the pub talking about it. It's not talking on the phone with your pals. It's not sitting talking to your family at home. This is all the time, constantly. And I wonder if people can keep the heat, to use it in Scottish.
Last week probably summed that up perfectly, didn't it? You look at the reaction to Fir Park on Wednesday night. We were both there, and you saw even just in that press conference the framing of it, of Danny, is this done? Danny, why did you get it wrong? Danny, what went wrong here? You then go to Sunday and it was Danny, title race is on. Danny, what went well? Danny, you picked the right team, and that's only a couple of days apart. I think that's where the manager's mentality comes in, and what we spoke about right at the top of the show. I don't think he'll be fazed by what's coming up. I don't think he'll get ahead of himself. Now, the old cliche, I know Josh loves a cliche, he'll be tuning in on his holidays, cursing me as I use the phrase, don't get too high when you win and too low when you lose, and all the stuff that we hear in press conferences from players that are media trained to enter into their life. But it is true. It may be a cliche, it may be something we can laugh about, but it is it is true. You have to have a certain mentality to be able to get through a title race. Rangers have not been involved in enough of them over the last 10 years. And also the one that they were, that was very successful for them. League was wrapped up by this stage just about. Obviously, we're still a few weeks away from the actual crowning day of 55. But by the time you got to January, you knew where the silverware was going to be come May. This time, as you outlined there, Blair, we've got no idea. We hope it's going to end in a positive way. We think it could end in a positive way from a Rangers perspective. But if you go into a last day and there's 3 teams bidding to try and win the Premiership, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And the reaction, the fallout, all the ingredients you can add into that, it's going to be quite something. So I think the fans have to be wary and have to recognise the part that they can play, the influence that they can have. We saw it on Sunday. The 2 home games coming up over the next couple of weeks, they speak for themselves, don't they? If Rangers can go and beat Celtic twice in the space of a week, then that's huge. You will be filming the entire 90 minutes on your phone just to get 30-second clips out of it if that's the case. And it's then, can you then build it? Can you harness it even more? I think it's Dundee United and Aberdeen ahead of the split. The post-split games are clearly going to be huge. I think Rangers will only have 2 of the 5 at home, so you have to make the most of them. So I think Sunday was a big moment in terms of unifying the support and the manager and the players. I know Philippe Clement spoke last season and before that about synergy and having that synergy between all those aspects. I think Danny Rule actually mastered that quite early on in his reign. I read a piece on the website maybe 6-7 weeks into his reign, looking at how he had done that from that very first night over in Bergen, and some of the messages he got across, some of the events he'd been at, meeting the Union Bears and that type of thing. So I think people have bought into him. They're maybe not necessarily bought into a number of these players, but when you get to this stage, 11 games to go, the time for booing them off the park and negativity and really piling in, even on nights as damaging and as disappointing as Motherwell was, I think you have to look at the bigger picture, look where this team has come from, look where they could potentially get to.
Absolutely. Let's get a couple of your comments in. Laura here says, no title race has been this close, certainly not in the last few years anyway, Laura. Mary here says, Danny has caught the Rangers bug. I think that's very clear to see from the way that he reacted on Sunday, the way that he's been, as you touched on there, Chris, the way that he's been acting with the fans. Bluebell here says, does anyone else think Blair has the perfect voice to do advert voiceovers? Very deep and soft. Thank you, Bluebell. I'll take that as a compliment. And one here from other Bluebells says, I feel like Danny is listening and learning from the fan reaction, which I don't feel as though other managers have done before. And that's a very interesting point, Chris, because the PR campaign from Danny Rule, whether that is a conscious decision from him or not, has been pretty much pitch perfect from the day that he rocked up at Ibrox. From everything between the way that he conducted himself, the way that he speaks in press conferences, little things, even shaking hands with the press. It's something that we all mention, but it's something that sticks with you. And he is a man who's conducted himself in the right tone since he walked in to the building, and you contrast that with the start of this season when it was Russell Martin at the helm, and obviously that didn't work out the way that anybody envisioned it would. And there's a sort of symmetry here as we go into this weekend's game against Livingston away at Almond Vale. The last time that Rangers went there, it was yourself and I that went and reported on that game, and that was quite significant that afternoon because if I'm right in remembering, that was Rangers' first domestic win in the league. With Max Aarons scoring that late winner after that long period of Rangers not being able to get a win on the board. And what was really significant about that game was no sooner had Max Aarons scored a 92nd minute winner, I think it was, and the fans straight away had turned back onto Russell Martin, declaring that he should be out of the club. And a little bit of different words, not quite the way that I'm putting it here. But that was, you contrast that to how things are now with Danny Rule, with the feeling of fan respect and admiration towards what is happening on the park, towards what has been done on the park. It just seems like chalk and cheese. And I think that the last time we were there, Rangers, as they usually do at Livingston, as the other bigger teams, Celtic, Hearts, they go and take those three stands. And the last time it was really toxic towards the dugout. Whereas this weekend, I think it could be massive. It could feel like a home game for Rangers, and that could be a huge, huge draw for them going on and picking up another 3 points.
Just on that comment about your voiceover, surely when it comes to the Rangers review, end of season review, you're the ideal man to be doing the voiceover for that one as well. So you've Bluebell has just put an idea in my mind that we will revisit come the end of the season. Hopefully you're telling the story of 56 come May.
I was going to say, Chris, there is nothing I would like to do better than to be talking through this season, the story of 56 from the rise from the ashes of the start of this season to Danny Rule lifting a title. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves just yet.
No, and those ashes, now that game at Livingston, as you say, we were both at. It feels such a long time ago. But you're right, it was quite a remarkable afternoon. That Rangers didn't play well, didn't look like they were going to win the game. They then do win the game, and as you say, the reaction, you get a couple of seconds of celebration, and then straight away it was anti Russell Martin, and that's a moment that he will, when it gets to that stage, there's no coming back from that. Is that even in celebration, the Rangers fans didn't want him there, and that said a lot about where the manager was, where that team was, and certainly where the support were at that time. Fast forward a few months, everything is just in such a different place, wasn't it? And the fan base are on a far better frame of mind. The team and the squad are also hugely improved form, and from a game that day, we thought that's just another. This could be more points dropped in the title race. Rangers won it, and it still didn't feel as if, well, they can go and kick on from here. Title race, we were talking about it with no real conviction at that time, because we didn't believe that there was going to be one on. We didn't think that at that stage that was not going to be the kickstart for Russell Martin. It almost just going to be a delaying of the inevitable, as it turned out to be. A victory on Sunday would be a very, very different feeling for Rangers. Right now, they just have to keep ticking these games off, keep having to pick up the points when they can. Of course, there'll be a look at what are Celtic doing, what are Hearts doing. Ultimately, Rangers can't really focus on that right now. They've done a big part of the job last week by beating Hearts. They just have to go and pick up their own points, take care of their own business, and whatever happens elsewhere happens.
Absolutely. We'll no doubt have more on that Livi game as the week progresses. Just a little point that I raised yesterday. I put my 2 pence worth in that I think that it might be worth pulling Nico Raskin out the side, maybe Toki Chukwueze and Mohamed Diamande starting in that game. Is that one you'd go along with, Chris? Would you subscribe to that? Do you think I'm way off with that shout?
I don't think you're way off. I think we both agree on Chukwueze as already one of the key parts of this side. The last couple of games we've been at, we both had 3 moments where we turned to each other and said that was good. Like the look at him, £4 million looks a good bit of business on him. I think he's been really impressive. I thought Sunday showed up a couple of the weaknesses in Nico Raskin's game, mainly his use of the ball at times. Obviously, there was that incident that you can't really account for in terms of the opening goal. I think Diamande has been good of late, and I think we mentioned it pre-match when we did the show with Josh. I think Dio was a bit unlucky to miss out at the weekend. I understand why Raskin played. I still think it was the right call to play Raskin, just because of what he does give the side. But you look at the use of the ball. He's not a great passer. I think Diamande is better in that regard, and you look at what a game against Livingston could be like, you're going to have to make the most of your time on the ball. You know they're going to sit deep. You're going to need to use it really quickly, really effectively. And I think Dio maybe brings a bit more in that regard than Raskin. So it's a nice position for the manager to be in. Now, you've got 3 central options there, and if you go for 2 of them, I don't think there's a bad combination in there. I don't think you can say that's a hugely wrong call, but I think Chukwani is definitely meriting another start, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Diomande alongside him on Sunday, put it that way.
Yeah, it'll also be really interesting to see how this the surface plays into Danny Rose' team selection, whether he'll play Dujon Sterling. I don't think so because of his recent injury record. I also would actually be quite surprised if Tua Romans plays, given that he's just coming back from getting fully fit. I think he might start Jaden Migoma. I know that probably one isn't that is particularly popular amongst the support. Obviously, everyone would like to see Tua Romans because of how well he's impressed, but it'll be interesting to see if he mixes up a little bit just because of the surface and just because of trying to avoid any unnecessary injuries. Chris, it wouldn't be a morning podcast with yourself on if I didn't ask you about some transfer news. No matter what time of the year we are in, it could be the middle of March and I will still be wanting to know about signings. One name that popped up on the internet last night I seen floating about was Dundee's Luke Graham. A few people asking if there's any validity in that, what the state of play is there. I know you did some digging last night. Can you give any update as to whether that is a genuine transfer target for Rangers and perhaps somebody they're looking at in the summer and beyond?
I did, but when I messaged someone at the club about that last night, I did have to apologise by saying I know it's February, but I'm back on again about transfers. Don't shout at me and don't leave me on 2 blue ticks. So we understand that Rangers did have eyes on that game up at Dens Park at the weekend, but it's just a case of them seeing what's out there, seeing what's in the league. I think Graham has been an impressive performer for Dundee. Stephen Presley spoke really highly about him when he was at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago. Portsmouth were interested in him at that stage. I think Portsmouth might even have had a bid, if memory serves. There's a lot of transfer stuff going on at that time, so if I got that one wrong, again, don't shout at me. But he's clearly a player that has, I think, a bit more progression, a bit more about him, can step up a level. And Rangers, as you would expect, they have to know what's out there. They have to know what's in the league. They have to then assess whether there's players within this league that can step up. We've spoken a lot about Scottish core, Scottish players go and sign the best of what's in the Premiership. So I think he is certainly someone that they should be keeping an eye on. That's not to say they will definitely firm up that interest in the summer and they'll make bids and he'll be a Rangers player. We are a long, long way from that stage, but they are keeping tabs on him, if you like. But it was just a case of sending someone there just to go and get a look and see how he's performing. So they may well do that again over the course of the season that's left. But I say we're a long, long way away from money being put on tables.
Okay, I'll stop bothering you for transfer news now. I'll leave you alone for a couple of weeks
anyway. Come back
when
next week and there'll be another one, don't worry.
Just before we wrap up, just some comments to touch on from the San Francisco 49ers CEO, Jed York. He's obviously part of the consortium that owns Rangers. He's been speaking on TalkSport about his involvement in both Leeds United and the Ibrox club. He came away with some quite interesting quotes that he came up to see the Old Firm game earlier in the season and talking about wanting to see Rangers back on the perch at the top of Scottish football. He said the goal is to always win with whatever sports team we're involved with. Hopefully we keep it rolling and see everything back to where it belongs. And I think that is, it seems to be a message that's coming out of everybody involved in the 49ers consortium, Chris, that it is aim for the stars, shoot for the top, and we won't be happy until we get there, which I think is really positive messaging for everybody to hear from a Rangers perspective.
I think he was asked also more about Leeds United in that interview, but I think you can extrapolate the answers on Leeds out into a Rangers situation. You can look at, well, what are they doing at Leeds and how does then that impact on matters up here? They will run both clubs with a similar mindset, a similar vision, if you like, in terms of always investing, always trying to get better. the targets at Leeds are obviously different from the targets at Rangers. The target for this season at Leeds is keep yourself in the league and then see where you can get to after that. The target now for Rangers is go and win the league, not go and try and lift not one bit of silverware, but two. I think it was interesting. He was asked about like future investment in Leeds, and basically said it's not really about investment; it's about the winning. Winning is the most important thing. That's why we're here. It's not about can we make money. It's not about what level of finance do we have to put in. It's what can we get out of it in terms of experiences and silverware. And that's been the message right since the early days of this takeover. But obviously a long time beyond the initial story breaking us and us reporting on that now. But that's always been a common right throughout the entire process and everything this season. They're here because they want to win. They want days like Sunday. They want days like Old Firm games coming up where there's so much pressure rising out of them. So I think they're here for the right reasons, and hopefully Danny Rowe and the players can go and give the investors and the ownership the memories and can repay some of the faith over the course of the coming months.
Absolutely. Well said, Chris. And that will do us for this morning. We'll wrap us up there. Thanks to everybody for joining us in the comments. Thanks to everybody for watching and for listening. Chris, I hope you have a lovely rest of your week before we head off to Livingston on Sunday. I don't think I'll speak to you before then, but it will be the pair of us through there on Sunday afternoon to bring you the latest instalment in this tantalising title race. But for now, from me and Chris, thanks for watching and thanks for listening.